is for Joy. Let me bring this over here. So I just went ahead and assembled a reference board. This is one that I had used for Sarah, so it has a lot of that same information, but I also included some of the stuff from your mood board and some stylized stuff that we could take a look at as well. Let's see. Pull that over. Okay, so let's load in your object. So I just started a new project. Just clicked on default projects. Let me go ahead and do Yacked. That way there's a keyboard display. Oh shoot. Yacked. There's a keyboard display right here. I'll keep that there. So I just press the caret key. And we're going to do default projects. Check save changes. Nope. Okay, so let's go ahead and import your assets. So I'm going to come here. I'm going to go import. We're going to go ahead and get the Asaro head. There we go. I'll pull this, make this a little bit larger so we can look at these references. Something else I included in that download folder is we can go ahead and import the digital Emily. Would you like to remove unused vertices? No. Oh crap, I keep forgetting about that. Let me pause it while I fix this really quick. Okay, so I'm going to come back here. We're going to go ahead and import digital Emily. Cool. So that could be a reference, especially when we get more finalized with our work. So let's go and let's just focus on the Asaro head for now. So I'm going to come back over here. Alright, something I'm going to do is I'm going to use a basic material with a slightly darker gray value. Under the light tab, you can move the light. I'm going to move the light a little 3/4. Even though this one's top down, so I might actually end up doing that top down. I moved mine right here, so we'll do something like this. Alright, something I'll do to make this easier to work with is I want to dynamesh this at a lower subdivision, or divisional, maybe not that low. Alright, actually, and then I might just zero mesh it, so we'll just zero mesh it. Nah, we don't need to do that. We're not at a point where we need to zero mesh it. Okay, so I'm going to dynamesh it. And something I'm going to do is I'm also going to insert a sphere. It's going to make the eyeball stuff a lot easier instead of doing empty sockets. Doesn't matter too much. I can do transparency. I'll scale this down. And then let's go ahead and mirror weld it. Alright, so I'm going to come back over here. So let's take a look at, I'm going to focus on these two, I guess. Alright, so a couple things. First, I think you went too hard on the higher subdivision levels. I think we really need to we need to be looking at this from all kinds of different views. We need to be focusing on large form changes and volumes. Before we dive into the details. So what I'm going to do is I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 as hotkeys for my common brushes. I'm not going to go over all of them, but I'm going to be using primarily my move brush to move things around. I'm going to use my clay brush to fill in gaps and kind of build up forms and fill in cavities. I'm going to use the clay build-up to build up form, right? I'm going to use my Damien standard to carve and define planes using Alt. I'm going to use hard polish to polish out planes, so if I want to flatten a plane, then we can do that. And then trim dynamic is just another type of polishing brush. And we can use inflate to build up volume and form. But okay, so I'm going to start with the move brush, and I'm just going to start moving stuff. I want to go ahead and just merge these down together. So we'll just merge down, say okay. And I can bring the eyeballs back later, but it might be easier if they're just together at the same time. And we'll just do that, just to fill that in. Okay, so I might just go ahead and I'm going to be looking at this one right here. And let's see, so we're going to do some big changes. And it's a good idea to try to get this to, like, if you're newish to facial anatomy and sculpting, I think it's a good idea to focus on, you know, trying to match like a reference like this one before trying to make it look like my character, right? Because I think, you know, we're trying to do two things at once. The ears, I might go ahead and I'm going to do select lasso. I'll turn off perspective, but just by pressing P. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this area, and I'm going to go ahead and go to split hidden, which is under the split menu. And then I'm just going to dynamesh this, and then on this one I'm also going to dynamesh it. And then smooth it. So on this one, we'll solo this. I'm going to click on solo, and I'm just going to get rid of this stuff. So we're going to go, I want this part like this right here, like that. I'll just do delete hidden, and we'll try dynameshing that again. There we go, cool. So, and then that way it's easier to deal with the ears as a separate subtool, right? And eventually I like to do that with like things like the nose, maybe even the lower jaw, the eyeballs, but for now let's not worry about that. All right, so let's keep going. So I'm gonna go ahead and just lose, I'm gonna just lose a lot of that stuff, right? And so what I'm going to do is, let's look at that simplified version. So we'll look at this side. So we're going to go ahead and just get that going. So I'm going to go ahead and move that up. The forehead's kind of tilted too far back. I'm just holding Alt on the mesh to move it along its surface normal, right? So it moves it off the surface. So very handy thing to know about the move brush. This stuff can just move forward a lot more. I know I'm going to have to shrink his cranium by like 75%. His cranium's a little too big. Let's go ahead and move that out right there. Okay, I'll use a clay brush, use a lower Z intensity, and just flatten and smooth that a little bit just to round that out. Let's go ahead and smooth that. I'll use the clay brush just to fill in that little cavity, and we'll round that out as well for now. Let's go ahead and move that forward, get that bridge in the nose. I'll just go ahead and smooth out, and I'll just move the nose. So I'll go ahead and move those nostrils in. I'm just going to fill them in for now, just to kind of keep with the Asaro head concept. Let's see. Okay, so we're seeing a very clear, distinct kind of. First, let's go ahead and get the cheekbone area. So what we're going to do is I'm going to use clay build-up. You might want to drop its intensity down a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to build this volume up. So right now it's a little too concave. So I'm just going to build that volume up, and then I can just draw this down to like the corners of the mouth. Okay, and then I might just use that clay just to fill that in a little bit. We'll smooth that out. Alright, I'll pull it in because I kind of pushed it out too far. So we're just moving it around. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and just do a little carving. So, let's just stick with the clay buildup. So I'll go ahead and carve into here, just to kind of continue the eye socket area. Just smoothing using the Shift key. I'm going to use that Damien standard to kind of help me shape that eyeball. Okay. I might lose that shape just a little bit, and then use the clay brush. So I'm just pushing that around. Now we gotta go ahead and move things around. Something I can do is if I want to bring that in, let's see, I want to go ahead and just do this really quickly. We're going to go snapshot. Save to desktop. Let's do downloads. Downloads. Okay. And then what I can do is I can come in here to texture, import, find that and open. Texture, we can add it to our spotlight. Oh, oops, select it, then add it to our spotlight. I can scale that up a bit. I'm going to bring the opacity down a little bit, so I'll just drag this down to like something like that. I'll press Shift Z to turn it on and off. So then what I'll do is just move this into position. Okay. And then what I might do is I'm going to store my camera. Oh, I have to turn on perspective. Let's go ahead and do that. First, let's realign that. And my camera might be too much, so I'm going to dock this over here, or too low. So I'm just going to do that. Okay, then I'm going to store camera, say okay. And that way I can move things around and do stuff, and then I can just click on camera and then bring that back. Alright, so let's see. So what kind of things can we do? So I'm going to turn off spotlight projection. That just turns off painting through the object, or through the image into the object. So let's see, I'm going to pull the corners of his eyes forward. We'll bring his brow forward a little bit. And some things I'm just going to have to do in a different view, but let's see. So holding that Alt key with the move brush is really handy for that, being able to move the surface along its normal, like push it forward in a way. Because otherwise the move brush just moves based on your camera. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and just we'll do this. We'll do lower Z intensity with Damien Standard. We'll go ahead and carve that nose a bit, use a bit of clay just to kind of fill that in. Let's go ahead and move the brow and eyeball, just like that. I have a feeling this probably isn't looking good in some of the other views, which I should probably check in a second. Let's go ahead and pull that forward. The head could be a little bit shorter. You can see that cranium ends a lot sooner, so we'll have to change that. Jaw can pull up. And we also got this kind of form right there. And then we can just use like a bit of clay. And then if the surface is getting a little too wobbly, and then we could also use hard polish. Hard polish can planarize that area and just kind of flatten it a bit. Okay. I'll take the lip, push that in, pull that lower lip down, move that up a bit. Let's go ahead and define that jaw a bit more. Just using mostly the move tool. You can get a lot done with just the move tool. Alright. So I know I'm probably going to have to change that quite a bit, so let's go to the front view. Alright. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and pull on the sides of the head. We'll go and pull this stuff out. You know, one thing I need to keep in mind is camera perspective, right? Like that me trying to do it to that view, so doing it to this view. You know, I'm not perfectly matching the camera, so it's just something you have to learn from experience, like what to try to assess, and that's why we try to look at this in a lot of different angles and perspectives, and not just one. Alright, just pull that up a bit, pull the corners of the nose up. We'll go ahead and increase that transition right there. Cheekbones, maybe you could go back a little bit. At the corners, we'll just smooth that off a little bit. I might go ahead and just tiny mesh it so that it You can turn on polish on the Dynamesh menu, and I can do something like this. It's not something I would want to focus on yet, or even personally, I just won't even do it. But if it's there, if that's something that you wanted. Okay, pull that a little bit forward. All right, and then we can take a look a little bit at and let's pull the corners in like that. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and drop in a sphere, import. We'll just import the head again, just to show, the changes we're making so far, right? Really important for us to like look at the planes of the face and get a better understanding of what we're working on, and always working from reference, especially if this is something that's new to us, which is facial anatomy. And we're going to stylize it, right? I'm not saying we're not going to go stylized. We're definitely going to go stylized. But, first we need to get the anatomy nailed down. Okay. Alright, so let's go ahead and focus on that skull. Let's go here. I'm going to turn off perspective just so that's like a little bit flatter. So I'm just going to take like this whole area right here. So we're just going to mask it. I'm going to control tap on the mesh to blur that mask. I'm going to blur it this way. And then I'm going to go ahead and switch the move tool. Just pressing W. We'll go ahead and center, or let's turn off symmetry. I'm going to center it. And then hold Alt to move this without moving the mesh. We're going to move it up to here. I'll move it something like right here. We'll try it like right here. I'm just going to scale it in. So we're just going to scale it in, maybe scale it down in the Z-axis a bit. And we'll go ahead and clear that mask. I'll go ahead and use clay to kind of fill that little abrasion area in. Let's turn on symmetry first. So I'll go ahead and fill that in with clay. I'll go ahead and smooth that down a bit. Oop. Fill that back in with clay. Let's go ahead and crash down this back area right here, this corner. And I might crash down this area right here, just holding Alt with the clay brush. Just to kind of start losing the corners. And just lose that area back there. And yeah, it gets a little bumpy in here, which I need to play with this shape a bit. I'm kind of at a too high res of a mesh right now to really be able to do that really easily with the smooth brush and even the move brush. But I don't want to like Dynamesh it too low again, because I think my face is going to just not have any detail if I do that. So, but I could use like maybe the inflate brush with a lower Z intensity. And for instance, this area right here kind of gets a little too flat, so that's too much what I just did, but just pull this forward a little bit, at least in the brow region. And I might just kind of grow some of this area that I shrank down a bit. But yeah, so getting a lot more face, a lot less skull going on there. I'm really not going to worry about the ears. They're probably like one of the most inconsequential parts right now, like towards the end you can worry about them, but I'm just going to go ahead and fill that in with the clay brush, and then just pull this to intersect the head. So we'll just do something like that. And they should meet at the jawline. So we'll just go ahead and go here, pull that down, pull that up, and do something like that just to match that reference. And they should go from the brow to the nose. Cool. Alright, let's come back over here. I think the jaw, let's go ahead and take this ear. I'm going to move this ear back. And this jaw, I think, could go back a little bit. So we can go ahead and do we'll just do that right there. I'm going to pull in the cheekbones in a second. Right now they're a little too much. Looking at it from multiple different views is really important for all your reference. Getting like references from above and then references from below is really handy. So I'm going to push in a bit on the middle eyes. I could see that was like kind of pulling forward too much. The brow, let's see. Let's go ahead and pull this over a bit. I might straighter. Cool. We'll go ahead and get that nose bone break right there. And this is definitely a very masculine kind of face and very Western, eye and nose shapes, but this is the reference we have right now, so that's what we're going to kind of work with for now. I'm going to get that extra dimension. I'm looking right there. I'm just getting a little extra dimension right there on the cheekbone. Something like that. Let's just smooth some of that stuff out a bit. Let's go bring that. I somehow accidentally messed up the Z intensity for the smooth brush. I'm going to go ahead and pull in a bit right here. Let's go ahead and go pull the brow in a bit like that. There we go. And so I can come down to this view and just look at the changes I made, right? Right, like see how much just a lot of these changes are building up over time. Even those last ones I just made were really helpful for the eyes, right? And that's why looking at it from above was really handy. Like this was where it was before I looked from above. The corners of the eyes were like too far in. The cheekbone and the brow was a little weird. But you can see that's like way more natural now. So that's why looking at it from so many different views is handy. The jaw, let's see. I'm going to take this and we're going to Alt Shift that to flip it. And look at the jaw with the slightly more complicated version of the sorrow head. So we're just going to go ahead and we'll get that division on the forehead. So we'll just go pull that up. Let's go like that. And I'm going to go ahead and run, let's see, I'm going to pull that out and pull that out, pull that out. I'm just pulling that out with the Damien standard to reinforce those planes. I might do that a little bit on this overhang right here. So, and then push that in a little bit. And just use a little bit of clay to fill in that spot. I might just do hard polish right there, just to kind of flatten that a bit. I'm gonna move this part of the eye forward a little bit, and then push this part right here in. I'm not sure if I like those changes, but it's good so far. Let's go ahead and just pull the corners of the eyes back a bit. Let's see. I'm gonna get a little bit of that kind of nasolabial fold. It's that this like kind of part right here that goes down to the around the mouth from the nose. So we'll just kind of build that form up. Just kind of flatten that a bit because it can easily get a little too poofy, and it starts to look a little weird. I'm gonna build up this part of the muzzle of the mouth a little bit, so we're just gonna flatten it a bit right there. I'm gonna go ahead and pull up this part of the mouth. We'll go ahead and define the lip line just a bit more with that Damien standard. And we don't want the mouth to be too wide. It's very easy to make the mouth too wide. Alright. And then I'm going to go ahead and cut in a little bit down here. Oops. That Damien standard. So we'll just go ahead and push that down right there. See, his lower lip is a bit strange, so I'm going to pull that up. Smooth that out a bit. Okay. Maybe move his mouth up a bit. I might shrink his eyes just a bit because his eyes got a little too large. So this is going to be a really good study for you if you want to get into concept, right? Because especially if you want to do characters, right? Because character anatomy is super important. So if you're going to do any characters, you kind of have to be good at even if you're doing stylized, you kind of have to be good at anatomy, right? You gotta know how anatomy works on realistic, characters and real life. Did I lose symmetry at some point? I don't know. Because that's what stylization is. It's like taking what exists in reality and choosing to stylize it instead of, you don't want to stylize things because that's what you have to do, right? Because you can't represent the physically plausible, realistic version of the character, right? You want to do it because it's like a conscious artistic choice. So, just wanted to kind of mention that, even though we're going to stylize this, and you might be like, this doesn't even look like my character, I think it's still helpful to you as an artist. So we'll do 7. I'll just go ahead and get plain on that, just using Damien standard. Alright. So something I like to do too is, I like to, especially when I'm making changes and I'm not sure if they're good changes, is I'll make duplicates. Alright, so we'll Control Z this back to something like right there. Let's do like right there. So yeah, those are all good changes, I think. So let's see. There's something like right around here I don't really like that, so I'm just going to use the clay brush to kind of smooth that out and fill that in. Alright. So I'm at a point where I could probably start looking at some more references. So let's go ahead and bounce around to some of these other ones. I'll still try to keep it, well, let's go ahead and move on to the neck. So I'll go ahead and do the neck. And I did this for Sarah, so if I go too fast, you could probably watch that video and see what I did there. Let's make sure we turn perspective back on. What I'm going to do is I'm going to insert a cylinder. So let's make sure our head's visible. So I'll just do that, pull that down. I'll just Control D to add some subdivisionals just so it's smooth. And I'm just going to use that move and scale tool. We'll scale it down a little bit. I want this to be just slightly skinnier than the jawline, like that. It needs to be angled a bit. You can see it's slightly angled like that. Somewhere like that probably is good. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is I want to insert maybe Cube 3D. We'll subdivide it a few times. Scale it down flat. And move it down to here. And we want this to connect here and come just shy of so it connects behind the ears and it comes just shy of the front of the jaw, so something like that. Okay, let's go ahead and scale it in the x-axis down to here. And then I might just dynamesh it just so it's easy to work with. So let's go low. Dynamesh. No. Okay. No. Cool. Let's turn on symmetry. Oh, I somehow rotated it weird, so I'm going to mirror and weld. Oh, let's do mirror and weld. There we go. So I lost symmetry at some point, so I'm just going to pull that out. So this is the part that's going to connect onto the clavicle right there, and then this part right here is going to connect up behind the ears, right? Connects to the skull, like right around here. I'm just moving this around. Okay, and it's going to have a bit of an arc to it. So this part comes back while the inside part kind of comes forward a little bit, and then we can push the interior like that. That's when you like turn your head, you can feel that muscle that goes from the behind your ear down to your collarbone bone. And it really comes down like this, so we're going to go ahead and draw it out with the Damien standard. So I'll just draw it out like that. Alright, I might take that same thing, duplicate it, and we're going to make this trapezius shape. And you know what, I'm going to move a lot of this stuff down once I start working with, when I start working with like the clavicle and shoulders and stuff like that in the torso. So we're going to go ahead and move this. I might just dynamesh the heck out of this and just re-smooth it. So I might go ahead and inflate it. So that's found in the deformation tab. And polish it, which is also found under the deformation tab, which is down here. And we're just going to scale it down and use the move brush. The nice thing about it being low res is, it's very easy to work with the move brush, and it's going to move really quickly. And we really don't. We care more about, you know, big shapes, proportions, things like that. We do not care right now about details, right? We do not want to care about that. As I keep stretching, you can see things are going to get like a little wonky. Just going to redynamish it by holding control and dragging on the background. So I'll just kind of have that meet up with that part. We're going to go ahead and do this. And our character, this musculature, is going to be important, right? Because even though our character might not be like a bodybuilder, you know, we're going for like a pretty strong character, one who has a lot of muscle buildup, even if it is under like a lot of skin or a lot of surface fat. You know, they're still going to be a pretty strong character. And I'm not going to go through all references just because this is honestly like the third or fourth time I've had to do this the past 2 weeks, but we're going to look at some of these. So I can kind of see the shape of that here. Let's go here. And let's turn on perspective so that this is going to kind of come back behind the nose, like right around there, and that flattens out quite a bit. So something like that. Probably goes a little wider. We can worry about all that detail later, all that nonsense. Let's go ahead and I want to block in really quickly the torso. So we'll take a look at, so I have a lot of very feminine references just because that's what I pulled up for Sarah's. I like this musculature breakdown. Like if you can make them as these kinds of shapes and block them in and get them accurate, you're in a really good spot. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and do, let's see, I want to do maybe something like this. I think something like this is pretty good. So pull that up. Kind of simplification. So I'm just going to do not switch. Let's just subdivide it a few times, and then I'm going to use trim dynamic with symmetry on, and I'm just going to start crashing this down. Let's go ahead and start scaling. I don't know why I didn't just start scaling. So we're just going to scale it to proportion a little bit. So I'll do trim dynamic. We're just going to kill all the corners. I could have started from a sphere, but doesn't matter. And that's just another way of doing. You could do a number of different ways. So I'm just going to use that move brush to start shaping the torso, the rib cage. And there's a lot of, you know, I should go in and do something like Pinterest.com. Let's see, rib cage artistic planes. Look for something like that. Or let's do torso. I'll bring it over in a second. This one's pretty good. Let's do copy image. And you might want to look at something like Proco. They have really great anatomy kind of breakdowns and simplification for artists. So I think that would be it's a really good resource to look at as well for how to kind of simplify the forms and understand them on a more basic level before you add detail. And as artists, that's what we want. We don't want to like do anatomy textbook references, because that's not super helpful for us. All right, cool. I think that's enough stuff for me to work with. All right, so let's go ahead and I'm gonna come over here. We're gonna grab this stuff. I'm gonna go Control-Alt left, Control-P and Pure F just to get that. I'll pull this stuff over. All this stuff is like more realistic, so pull that over. Okay. So I don't think I'm too far off, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to push this part of the torso down right there. This probably comes back a bit. Something like that. We'll definitely have to scale it in. The rib cage kind of narrows at the top, and its peak is like usually like right there. So this also has to kind of scale back as well. And then I might go ahead and duplicate this. And then we're going to move it down and just turn it into the pelvis. So the pelvis is a little further back than the rib cage. It's tilted down and forward. I probably still need to find some good reference. So I'm going to go to my anatomy reference folder. I'm going to look for torso, and I'm going to try to find a good simplification. Let's see. Da, 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 da. So far, I'm not seeing any that I don't already have. So looking at, even with all my stored, saved stuff, it's still a lot of searching and things like that. I like that one. That one's really fun. Yeah, I'm still not finding anything better. All right, let's pull that down. So you can kind of see it right here. Let's go ahead and widen the hips a bit. I'm going to pull this forward. I might look at some of these, like that one kind of works, but let's look at like a real person. So let's see. Let's look at this person. And men and feminine visual traits versus male visual traits, or masculine, whatever you want to call it. They present differently, so it definitely depends. Right, and then from there it's just we'll go ahead and duplicate this, and then it's a lot of just now I'm gonna go back up and take a look at this one. Transitioning from one to the other. So I'm going to go ahead and just use the move brush. And these hips are probably too far away from the rib cage. So move that down a bit. What I'm doing, I've also uploaded that folder for you guys, but I might do something as well, like we'll go ahead and import a crochet. And then I'm going to scale this up because it's way too small. Let's scale it up more. Okay. And I might come over here and I'm going to look at the back. So ship this. Okay, cool. So I'll come over here, and I'm underestimating that back area. So I'm going to pull that up. And just get that back right there. Let's go ahead and dynamesh that object, so and we can worry go ahead and press Control N, pull this over and do Shift S. Oops, let's go back over here. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and pull this stuff forward up to here. Pull that back a little bit. Hit bone. Let's go ahead and pull that forward a little bit and pull it out. Alright, what I'm going to do is just mask off this area. Let's go ahead and do that. And then I'm going to go ahead and extract it. We'll just say extract. Let's go ahead and give it a... yeah, that's good enough. Doesn't really matter. We'll say accept. I'll clear that mask. I'll come over here. I'll also clear the mask on that one. I'm holding Alt tapping on the objects to switch to them really quickly. So we'll go ahead and pull this down in the center, but does something like this, so it still pushes back. But we're just going to make the pectoralis. And this area, let's clear that mask. Let's push this down a little bit, right there. Just move that in closer together. It's definitely thicker over here as it connects underneath the arm, and then like thinner in the center. Like the middle pectoralis is pretty pretty thin. I'll just grab this and get that there. Let's get that to connect there, and then I might want to do something like we'll do it on this guy again. Actually, let's just go ahead and insert a cube. I'll go ahead and scale it down, and then scale it in the x-axis, and move it down here. Scale it down a little bit more and move it over here. I can look at that reference again of the shoulders, something like this. It's like a bow shape. So I'm going to pull it over here. We're going to do the clavicles. And then I'm going to go ahead and we'll just go ahead and dynamesh it now. Let's do a lower subdivision. I'll dynamesh. Let's do low. Let's just dynamesh it at whatever the default resolution is. So I'll go ahead and pull that up a little bit. It's going to pull forward, and then it's going to move back, kind of like that. And then let's look at it from the front. You can see it right there, right? It kind of bows down a little bit, lifts up at the end. So we're going to go ahead and do something like, let's go and mirror and weld. We're going to kind of pull it, let's turn on symmetry, let's pull it down there. Alright. And we can always look at that écorché. I can come over to the écorché. Let's take a look at this, and not everything on it's going to be, you know, super accurate. Always, you know, not always the case. Still an artist's interpretation. What I want to do is I'm going to take this, let's see, we're going to go ahead and move this stuff forward. I'll probably like kind of find an in-between, right? Like I might pull these back. Move that stuff forward a little bit. This stuff will come out to there. Move that in. This all becomes like an empty mass. Or not an empty mass, but it's like skin stretching over that area. So let's move that down. This comes all the way out to the corners where that clavicle will meet the shoulder blade at the back. But that gives me a pretty good, and then on here I'll just go ahead and push this in, and then this one I'll also push it in. That gives me a base I can work with for the torso body. Let's go back to the head. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and clear this, and I'm going to pause here, and then when I come back we'll take a look at trying to get the head to match your references a little bit better. Okay, Joy, I'm going to do the second part of this. So I'm going to be jumping around, right? So I'm going to be looking a lot at, you know, I'll look back at my like anatomy references to kind of refine the anatomy a bit more. I don't have nearly enough, right? Obviously I have an anatomy folder on my computer, but this is something that, you know, I should be looking up tons and tons of references. And, you know, doing this over, you know, multiple sessions, multiple hours to get the anatomy feeling really good. So what I'm going to do is, and make a bunch of versions and backups. So I'm going to clone this. So I might use something and just do like a simplified kind of approach like this one right here, to try to get this to feel a little bit closer to like a feminine look, just to kind of get a little bit of that balance back. Might just go ahead and, you know, that character, it seems like you're going for is trying to have a bit of both worlds, right? So let's go ahead and just narrow that down. Let's go ahead and I'll just, you know, use that Damien standard. Let's go ahead and bring that Z intensity down. So I'm just going to go ahead and pull that back, push that back in a little bit. I'll definitely lose that edge I just got right there. We'll go ahead and pull that up a bit. Let's go ahead and pull the cheekbone back a bit. So I'm just going to pull this back, pull the jaw back a little. Go ahead and just shrink her chin a bit. We'll lose the shape of her nose just a bit, like we're not going to go that like Greek sculpture kind of look. We'll get a little bit in here. I'm going to go ahead and subdivide it once, just so I can get a little bit more definition in here. So I'm just going to get kind of like the eye socket, just comes out to like something like right around there. I'm going to go ahead and smooth that down, right? But I do want to get a little bit of that separation for myself. Just something I really kind of want. I'm going to narrow this a bit. I can, you know, use that Damien standard to kind of define those shapes a bit more. So, and then I can use clay buildup. Let's bring the Z intensity down. I'm going to turn off the alpha. I'll just use this to kind of define the volumes a bit better. So, and then just use that move brush to really help us. And I'm going to smooth that area out a bit more. I'll do trim dynamic. Trim dynamic. If I feel like I need to add in a plane, so I might just bust that up a bit. Same thing with this one right here. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and use that Damien standard. I'll do it really large. Might go down that subdivision level. And I'm just going to go ahead and get a little bit of that cheekbone right there, that kind of jaw musculature area, and then I can smooth that area out a bit. Okay, I'm going to narrow her chin, so we're just going to make her chin a little less square, less of a lantern jaw. So we'll add more mass up in this area, and then just pull the edges in the corner back a bit inside. Okay, I mean, these are pretty small changes, but we can just compare them to here, right? That's already an improvement. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and bring the skull in a bit. So we're going to go like this. So we're going to just kind of smooth that area out. I'm going to bring her forehead forward. So getting a flatter forehead. Not a tall forehead, but a flatter one. A sloped forehead usually feels a bit more masculine, but you know, that's, you know, just stereotypical gender indicator, so you know what you decide to go with is up to you, of course. I'm going to push the corners of the mouth back, so we're just going to grab this area right here. I'm going to go ahead and soften the mask right here. I'll do that, and just smooth that, and then I'm going to go ahead and just pull back, just so we can get a little tuck. And then we'll pull the corners in like that. And then we can just smooth that area out a little bit. Okay, let's go ahead and come in here for the lips. I'll go up a subdivision level. Gonna look at some lip references. So we'll just look at the planes of the lips right here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this area right here. All the way up to the corner of the mouth, like right there. And I'm just going to invert that selection. We're going to switch the move tool. I don't know what, here I'm going to restart Yact, like that. Yact. Yes. Alright, so switch the move tool, and we're just going to drag that back. And so let's go ahead and clear that. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and run ZRemesher. I don't want to Dynamesh. If I Dynamesh, it might like start bridging the stuff together. So I'm just going to go ahead and use ZRemesher. Because ZRemesher will redistribute our topology and give us better topology, but without welding the objects. So what I can do is I'm going to go ahead and subdivide, right? And then Shift D to go down a subdivision level, D to go up a subdivision level. But I'll go ahead and duplicate this. And then on the original one, I'm just going to Control Z this back. Let's go ahead and hide the other one. I'm going to Control Z this one back before I subdivided it. So we'll go to like right around here. And we'll take, and let's go ahead and solo. And then I'm going to go ahead and project this onto the other object. But I don't want to project the inside the mouth. You'll see I'm going to get an issue, right? If I project all, actually it's not that bad. But let's go ahead and we're going to do this, right? So if I press Shift F or click on this button, we can see the poly frame, but we can also see poly groups, which are in my, right now are a little bit more important. So I'm going to switch to the move tool, and I'm going to hold Control, click and drag, which is going to mask by topology. So you can see it's going to follow the form of the model to mask it off. So I'm going to press Control W. See, I can mask that area. So that's cool. So I can, let's go ahead and I'm going to invert my mask. I'm going to press Shift F, and so we can see the mask a little bit better. I'm going to Control Tap on the mesh to blur the mask, and Control Alt Tap on the mesh to sharpen, Control Tap to blur, Control Alt Tap to sharpen, and then I'm press Control W. And so Control W is just going to polygroup what I had masked. Cool. And then I'm going to separate the upper lip from the lower lip in a polygroup. So we're going to hide that, so Control Shift tapping on this, and Control Shift tap it again to hide it. And then I'm going to use W to bring back the move brush, and then Control drag on the topology to select that. So I'm going to go ahead and blur, sharpen, and press Control W. So now I have a polygroup for the inside of the mouth, for the lower part of the face, and for the inside, or for the upper part. So that's great. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and Control tap this, and then press Control and tap the background to invert my mask, which just makes it all masked. We'll do Control Shift tap on the background to bring everything back into focus, and I'll just Control tap on the objects. Or sorry, Control tap. I don't even know what I did. Control tap on the background to invert that, and so then I'm going to bring this mesh down into position. So we'll put it back where it was. So let's see. Looking at this. And I can turn off solo so we can see both of them, and I can turn on transparency to kind of see through this. So I might just go ahead and bring the upper lip to match that lip line a little bit better, and then I Control tap and Control H to hide my mask to invert that mask, just to put that into position. And we'll just go ahead and move this into position, and then I'll go ahead and hide the original. There we go. Let's turn off transparency. And so then what I'm going to do is we'll just go ahead and click on project all. Oops. Let's go ahead and clear my mask. So I'm going to do project all. Let's make sure the other head is visible. And we'll click on solo. So we're only looking at this object. And I'll click on project all, which is found under the subtool project right here. I just have it on my menu. So that's just going to do that right there. I'm going to have to clean up the lip line a little bit because this one doesn't have that gap there, but this one does. So we'll project all again, smooth that out, go up a subdivision level, project all. Okay, and so at this point, we're not getting any more detail, so we can delete this original one. So we'll delete this one. Say okay. Now we have this one that has that mouth cavity, and also cool thing has all this subdivision levels. So we'll go ahead and go solo, and at this point I'm not going to dynamesh unless I know what I'm doing. So we got to be careful with the dynamesh. So I'm going to go ahead and go down a lower subdivision level. I still want to be working at pretty low subdivision levels. Let's go ahead and grab this in here, mask it, and then what we're going to do is we're just going to polish that. So we'll just polish that. So, and then maybe smooth it, polish, 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 and go up subdivision levels just because there's like a bit of a weird shape in there that I want to get rid of. All right, so I'm going to come mask this off, blur, blur, and then just go ahead and I'm going to be focusing on the planes of the lips. So I'm going to go ahead and get like a flat top plane, something like this. All right. And I also want this to kind of, let's go down a subdivision level. I want this to kind of transition from inside here out, right? So it like kind of, you can see right here, it wraps into the mouth. So we're going to go ahead and flatten this. I'm using that clay buildup just with Alt on my keyboard, and then we'll just build that up like that, and then we'll go ahead and do the upper lip. So I'll go ahead and we'll leave it open for now just because it's easier to select and isolate. Let's go ahead and grab this. I'll flip this. And so what I'm going to do is I'll flatten this back a little bit, and then we're going to go ahead and build up the mass right here. So we'll go ahead and build that mass up. We'll get a little bit volume in here. And then we'll go ahead and just use Damien Standard to define the lip line. Let's use Damien Standard, just add a little volume in with clay, and then use maybe the standard brush with inverse and just turn that Z intensity down to kind of push in on the other side. So we'll just push in right there. We can do the same thing down here. Oh, let's go ahead and clear that mask. Okay. And then, you know, this line right here needs to like come into here. So I'll just maybe use Damien Standard to force that to come into inside the mouth. All right. So we'll just go down a subdivision level. So let's go ahead and, you know, we can come in here and maybe redefine a little bit the shaping. Oops, let's use a low Z intensity and just kind of build up some of this stuff. I'm going to build up that corner of the mouth a bit, so we'll just use the clay buildup right here, this little overlap shape. That's, again, why it's great to have so many different references. So I'll just go ahead and pull that in. And we'll have, oops, we'll have the this nasal labial fold. I'm going to kind of continue it down to here, around here. I'm going to add a little bit of volume back into this area, just kind of soften the cheeks a bit, add a little bit of volume and form back in there. We can go ahead and lose a little bit, and I'm just going to use the move brush and just push this in a little bit just to define that philtrum. Let's go ahead and do the nose. So I'm going to go ahead and mask this off. Let's go ahead and clean that part up. Let's go ahead and go up to here. Alright, and then I'll come back down here. So I'm just going to go ahead and just get a clearer division between this area and the nose. So there's a bit of a transition because I smoothed that out. Okay. And then I'll just come over here and I might soften that mask a little bit and we'll just smooth that a bit. Then we're just going to get some nice overlap. So let's go ahead and move the corners in. And we can go ahead and get those nostrils back in. And let's go ahead and smooth that a little bit. And then I'll go ahead and Alt-click on that surface. And we'll hide the mesh. We'll push that up into the model a little bit. It's too large, so I'm going to have to mask it, and then bring that down a little bit. Now let's go ahead and try that. Let's do something like that. And I'll just kind of smooth that transition up a bit. So those nostrils are like way too strong, but I think it's fine for now. And we'll just go ahead and do something like this. Just using that move brush liberally. But yeah, let's go ahead and go up a subdivision level. I'll go ahead and smooth that a bit. Alright. See, I'm getting a little bit of, so it's something we can see on this nose, but I don't know if I brought in any nose anatomy stuff. You can kind of see it here. You know, we want that kind of clear division a bit. You know, we'll soften back up, but you kind of want, you know, this to have, you know, the nostrils, you know, are a separate piece of cartilage, and then this part of the nose is a different piece, right? So I'm just kind of making sure there's a bit of a difference between them. So we can do that, bring that nose in, a bit of the nose bone. Let's get a little bit more of this volume right here. Right. All right, so we've been looking too much at this, so let's take a look at some softer characters. So let's go ahead and start softening this up a bit, but let's see those changes, right? A lot of improvements, a lot of fixes, so it's all good. So let's see. So what we're going to do is jump down a subdivision level. Let's go ahead and smooth this area out of it. The eyebrows, I'm going to go ahead and give it a bit of a softer look. The brow region, a little bit less intense and hard. So we'll just go in there. I'm going to add a little bit of volume, so I'm just going to use clay buildup and clay just to kind of add some volume and overlap in here. So something like that. We'll go ahead and lower the brow effect a bit, so we're just going to kind of make the brow a little less intense. Let's go ahead and bring this brow region in a bit. I like the cheekbones, like in the sense that I like keeping cheekbones on the character. We'll make her eyes a little smaller, and you know, we're gonna have to stylize the character a little bit more in a little bit. I'm gonna make her nose a little bit smaller, so we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna reshape her bridge for that. We're gonna make the wings and the nose a little softer. I'm gonna move her lips up, so let's go down to subdivision level. Shortening the distance between the mouth and the nose is a surefire way to make a character feel younger and usually have softer features. Let's go ahead and reduce the chin again. So we're just going to narrow it and then just make it softer. Oops. I might just go ahead and smooth it out a bit. Okay, we have much more of that cheek kind of shaping, right? So this area right here has a little bit more volume to it. There's a lot more kind of fat in this area, so I'm just going to smooth that area off and just add a little bit of volume. We're going to make her lips more plump, and I know this is going to be very relevant to some of our references, right? Because we are looking at a lot of characters who have thicker lips, so I have like more of like a vertical height, so we're going to go ahead and bring that up, bring this down. So you can see, even though I did that, like that we did the écorché head, we did a lot of stuff with you know, looking at a bunch of different references that weren't our characters. It was still a good exercise, right? Because it's pretty easy to it's much easier to just get changes to our model to match the proportions that we want in our reference, with the anatomy already kind of there, right? And we can, you know, we can lose the anatomy, we can build up a lot of form, or we can like lose and build up form as we go. Let's go ahead and fill this area in right here a bit. So I'm just going to soften that area and just smooth that out a little bit. All right, like doing all that stuff is really easy, comparatively, right? Let's go ahead and get her nose to have a bit of an arch, and then I'm going to go ahead and soften her nose bone. We'll just move that down. We'll get a bit of a graceful arc for the this change from here to here, from nose bone to eye socket. All right. You can see she's already looking a little bit more feminine. Let's go ahead and just smooth this transition right here. Go up a subdivision level and let's just smooth this area out and just lose that a little bit more. I'm gonna go ahead and push this area in just a bit, like it's kind of poofing out a bit too much for me. I'm gonna go ahead and smooth and soften this area right here. We'll go ahead and lose a little bit of the forehead and brow region. Okay. So let's go ahead and look a little bit more at some of our references. I like things like this because I think, you know, one, looking at head scans is just great reference. You just see the subtleties, and then two, this is also just, you know, seeing different proportions. I mean, like, you know, Angelina Jolie has very, like, prominent lips, so it might be something that we, you know, our character's gonna have prominent lips too, so I'm gonna go ahead and push this in a little bit on the end to get more of that separation or that fold, so then I can come in here and just maybe draw that out with the standard brush, and then use the fill brush, or the clay brush, to kind of fill in some of this area, just to kind of help that a bit. But let's go ahead and just make her lips, so I'll just go ahead and reshape her lips so she has like a fuller lip like that. I'm going to go ahead and hide that because this right here, I'm going to have this kind of pull out and add more mass in here. So I'm just using that Alt on the move brush to kind of move that in, and then we'll do the same thing right here. Pull all this stuff forward. Let's get up to this right here. So I'm going to get into the middle of, or the corner of the mouth. Okay. And then I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing down here, but we're going to do that right here. So we'll add a little bit of a separation in the middle, like that. And then we're just going to go ahead and add some mass into here. So it's looking a lot softer. You know, let's go ahead and I'll add it right here, Shift S, just so we can look at the differences. We'll come back to this duplicate that I made, and I can just dial back, right? Like how those changes build up over time. Cool. All right, so I'll delete that one. Okay. All right, so, and then, you know, we can use that lighting to also take a look at this control. And let's make sure I got basic material on, and with a slight gray. So just look at that from above. And that's something we can also take a look at. Let's go ahead and pull this back. Push that back and maybe pull that forward a little bit. You know, I mean, this character, or, you know, this person, she's not a character, she's a person. I mean, it's a character, but that she's kind of dressed up as, or not dressed up as, you know. But what we'll do is we'll make this much softer. You can definitely see the shape of her skull, though. We have too much of a gap here, probably. So let's go ahead and Shift D that. Let's move that forward. Go up, and then we'll just kind of lose that a little bit. And, you know, if she's older, so, you know, the definition of her skull is definitely more visible, but, you know, so if you were going with like an older character, you know, we might want to get that cheekbone, that front plane of the cheekbone back, but we're not doing that. So I'm going to soften it because this is a young woman, I think, that you're going for. And I'm just going to go and lose a little bit of that jaw line a bit. Okay. And for her, she's this plane, like these forms in the nose, you know, kind of wrap back a lot sooner. So it's like kind of a shorter area. So I just use Damien Standard to trim that down. And then it's also more of this front part, less of the nostril, so we can pull that back. And we'll just go ahead and just make sure we're shaping this all right. You know, her nose tapers, right? So it's wider at the base and the bridge of the nose, and then tapers. Shorter nose, smaller nose. So we'll just go ahead and pull that in a little bit. Reshape the lip position, and especially when it comes to characters and likeness, you know, subtleties are really important. Let's go ahead and bring the jaw up a little bit, reduce that. We'll soften that transition there. So we'll just look at something like that. So we can go ahead and maybe, I'm going to add a little volume to this fatty area right here that's in the eye socket. And I'll just, you know, I'm using a really low Z intensity on that. I'll just do that right there. And then soften that up a bit. Okay, I'm going to bring the corners of our eyes up forward a little bit. They're a little too deep. All right, let's go ahead and deal with the ears. So we're gonna go ahead and I'm gonna scale them down a little bit. They're a little too large. Push that back out. So they should fall between the brow and the bottom of the nose. So I'll just pull it up a little bit. Okay, and then I need to move the skull. You know, the corner of the skull should kind of, the back of the skull should kind of come up right behind the ear. Smooth that down. What I'm going to do is I'm going to solo this, and I'm going to get a clear division on the back of the jaw. So the jaw should kind of, let's go down the subdivision line. Let's go. Jaw should be like this, and then be like this in the back. So, and then I can go ahead and do hard polish, and just I'll polish that off just to make that a little bit more obvious. And go up, and then we can smooth that out. Turn off solo. There we go. And we'll just dial that corner down a bit because it's a little too prominent or too strong. And we'll just move her face forward a little bit, the corner of her face. I think her jaw pushes back too far, I think. Okay. Alright, so even though we were doing like the Cesar head and the masculine stuff, you know, over time it can start to look like a, you know, completely different person with just some really gradual but subtle changes. So we'll make her eye line there. I'll go ahead and you can see I'm getting a lot of mileage out of just this one reference with that lighting setup. The peak of her eyelid is kind of like right there. And we'll worry about like the eyelids like later. It's like, you know, if we worry too much, I think it's easier, in my opinion, to like sculpt the eyelids closed, right? Because the sooner we start, or if we start too soon on trying to get the eyelids to like work with the eyes, it gets really challenging. It does, you know, it's really important, but for me, I want to not be distracted by the eyes, so I'm trying to go for like a closed eyelid situation. But then eventually we'll want to go ahead and sculpt those open. You'll see I usually go in and smooth stuff out, right? I'm not trying to get like detail at this moment. I'm just looking at volume and form. I'm gonna go ahead and push that in so where that eyeball kind of pokes out the most. Right there. I'm gonna go ahead and clean up this brow. You can see on her brow it's very even. This is a little wobbly. So I'm just gonna go ahead and move it around until it kind of hits the shape I need it to. I might block in a plane there just to help round that out. So I'll just might use trim dynamic to kind of soften this whole area right here, that bone transition, and then smooth it. Okay. Alright, let's go ahead and duplicate it. Should have been doing more of that. Let's go ahead and take a look at some of our people references. So we're going to look over here. I added a bunch of extra ones that I had in like a faces folder. I also added a bunch of, you know, stylization, which we'll want to come to eventually, but my personal opinion is let's try to make it look like a person first and then stylize it. Mostly because you're still learning, right? Like you're still practicing, you're still you're still learning anatomy, right? So I think this is a useful. It's kind of like I don't want you to go into stylization before getting the anatomy like really solid. So I might like look at some of these women right here, and we're gonna go ahead and do some pretty big changes. So first is I'm gonna make her brow a little less prominent. So we're gonna go ahead and pull that back, pull that forward. I might make her forehead a little softer, so I'm just gonna go ahead and smooth that out. I'll lose that a bit. She has, like this woman, like right here, you know, that brow is a lot shorter, probably a lot shallower, right? Like it's not gonna stick out, like have quite this much depth to it. So I'm gonna go ahead and pull it down. I'm not gonna be distracted by her eyebrows, right? Because she's clearly like got an expression on her face. This one's right here. Right here is kind of nice for, I can see her forehead a little bit better and like the light and what's going on there. So I'm gonna maybe push this in a little bit. Let's go ahead and her nose kind of pushes back. It's also rounder, so I'm gonna go ahead and get like it has like a rounder arch right here. So I'm just gonna use like maybe the standard brush and then smooth that back. Looking at this woman's nose, right, like this bridge, both of them, like, well actually for her nose kind of pokes out more. But let's see, I'm gonna bring that bridge of the nose in further back, and then we're gonna like really kind of flatten and soften the nostril, and I don't know the technical name for this part of the nose, but we'll also bring that back in a little bit. And you know, she has a very distinctive nostril shape, right? So we're gonna come over here. So we'll just go ahead and bring that back. We'll go ahead and let's go ahead and this got a little thin in here, like that edge right there. So I'm just gonna smooth that out a bit. So we don't have quite that plane change right there, so I'm going to make that a little bit more like that. I'm going to go ahead and use the clay brush just to kind of smooth that transition right there. I know I need to work on it a little bit more, but I think that's a start. Let's go ahead and we're going to go ahead and I'm looking at this kind of plateau, you know, this going down here. I like that I want to keep this, right? Like I want this to be present for a long time, but I'm going to soften it just a little bit and soften this. I think she has a little bit more of this kind of Cupid's bow shape. Let's go ahead and I think her nose, we're going to bring it down right there. I'm going to lose a little bit of this definition right here by just using that clay to fill it in and maybe smoothing it. Her nose is very, very soft, right? Like it's not very planar. It's very smooth and I don't know a good word of saying it, but just like it's just very soft and elastic compared to like that some of our references that we were looking at earlier, where the nose is way more planar and dynamic. So we might scale her nose up a little bit. It's like kind of getting like a little button nose. So we'll go ahead and go here. I'll just go ahead and turn off symmetry, center it, reset the pivot, move this up, and I'll just go ahead and scale the nose up a bit and move it down. I don't want it to be quite that deep. And the ball of the nose, so I don't know if that's a technical term for it, but the ball of the nose is getting a little too large. But we'll go ahead and do that. And yeah, don't like that, so let's go ahead and just fix that part right there. And this gets like a little too, it's like almost like a cartoony nose, clown nose or something. You know, a lot of things I'm like kind of just approximating or going off of memory of like, oh yeah, I think this is what a nose is supposed to look like, which might be wrong, and if you're starting out you don't want to do, but for me, I have enough experience or looking at reference of human anatomy that it's not too inaccurate, or there's like shortcuts I can do without looking at references. I'm going to build that back up a little bit and then just smooth that out. I want to keep that division though between the nostril and the cheek though. Looking at that, her nose is it's like that's one of the problems also with feminine features is features are so soft and so much more like disguised by fat. A lot of the corners are like kind of removed or not removed, but de-emphasized. Her nose got really short, or like her nose bone got really long. I might go ahead and just bring her features closer together and make her head a little shorter. Maybe bring her nose closer to her lips. I'm gonna smooth off this area a bit. I might use like clay just to fill it up. I'm looking right here just to kind of get that transition a bit better. Okay. I'm gonna go ahead and soften this area a bit. So we're just gonna go ahead and use that clay brush with a low Z intensity just to fill it in. Same thing with right here, and I might even just smooth this area right there up. It's gonna make her look younger. You can see there's like a bit of a weird shaping to her nostrils, so I'm just gonna see if I can fix that. Let's go ahead and use Damien Standard just to break that peak that I'm getting. There we go. Something like that maybe. And then, you know, this ball of the nose is still like too large. Okay, that's looking better. Very small changes. I mean, they're not small changes, they're pretty big, but you know what I mean. Let's go ahead and just add a little volume into the bottom of her her lower eyelids. Right, so this feels more spherical. We'll go ahead and use clay to fill in this transition from the lower eyelids into the rest of her eye, just to make that, or her eye socket. I'll smooth that out. I don't want to build that up too much because I'm going to lose that form. I can already feel it starting to lose a bit. A lot of these women, their lips kind of roll out, right? Like this one feels tucked in. These feel a lot more rolled out. So what I do is, let's go ahead and we're going to mask this off. And let's change that lighting just a little bit. So I'll go something like a little closer to frontal. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull this stuff back a bit. I'm going to go ahead and get a little bit more division right here. So let's go up a subdivision level. I'll go ahead and just kind of cut into here a little bit and use the standard brush just to build up the form right there. And then we can smooth off up here so we don't have that edge very distinct or prominent. And then we're just going to kind of bring some more volume to the front of her lips. So we're just going to go through and give a lot more volume. And we can just give a bit of an arch to that. It's matching kind of the arch to that woman. You know, this kind of like this middle triangle shape kind of like dominates. It's like going that way. So I'm going to go ahead and pull some of this in to the middle, and then we can pull this back a bit. Oops. Ow. Okay. You can see right here we're getting a bit of a problem there, so I'm just going to fix that. Maybe just smooth that transition. That philtrum kind of like valley should kind of line up with the bone of the nose. Or not it's not bone, it's a cartilage, but whatever that little piece is. I don't know what all the anatomy pieces are called. I'll come over here and I'm going to give like a little bit more volume to her lower lip. And, you know, I'll look at it from the side, kind of feels like it's coming forward too much. She's almost got like an underbite, so I'll pull that back. Her jaw can be a lot softer. I might add a little volume, so like here, let's do clay buildup. And I might do it right here just so she doesn't get like a really plainer chin. So I'm just going to round that shape off a little bit and then soften it up. Okay, I'm going to kind of build up a little bit of volume right here. I'm going to fix up this corner of the mouth a bit, so let's go ahead and clear up the mask. I had a mask there. So we'll just get that overlap a bit. I'll use just the clay brush to kind of like even this area out and then smooth it flat just to lose it. Okay. Let's take her nose. I'm gonna flatten it. I'm looking at this one right here now. And then let's get this like kind of, her nose is very heart-shaped, right? So let's go ahead and get this nice heart-shaped nose. We'll flatten out the nostrils a bit. Let's go ahead and get the wings of the nostrils. Let's go out like this. Okay, almost come all the way out to here. There's this form right here that goes like right there to here. So we lose it right around here, but it definitely transitions from here to here. But the corner should still like almost goes all the way to the corner. You can tell also, hopefully, from this that, I don't want to completely lose my anatomy, my original anatomy forms, right? Even though like a lot of it's like starting to disappear and go away. I'm still like, but I'm still not being precious, right? Like I don't think anything that I'm making is, gonna stick around forever, right? Let's go ahead and bring the nose bone back quite a bit. And then I'm gonna have to maybe push this in a bit more so we get more definition in the eye socket, right? Let's just bring that a little bit closer in a bit. No, I don't like that. Her eyes are starting to get too oval. I'm going to duplicate this one. I like to see where I come from, personally. Let's duplicate that one. I'll delete that one. Delete. Okay. All right. So you can see how much this is changing. I'm looking at tons and tons and tons of reference, right? For anatomy's sake, if I was trying to make it look like a single specific person, right, I would be looking at like a ton of reference for that person. Let's go down to subdivision level. You can see also these subdivision levels are really helpful to me, right? Like they really help me make changes at different with different brushes and different speeds, right? Sorry, one second. I'm trying to get, there's like a division of the eyelid, and then there's like, this usually gets like a little flat in here, right? As this becomes like just kind of almost like what's it called? This becomes like stretched skin, right? And so then this comes up to here, and I'll just go ahead and fill it in a little bit. And then right around here, it starts to become a lot of fat that transitions from like right there. And if we look at, I'm still going to look back at my anatomy reference, right? So I'm going to come over here and we look at that, right? You can kind of see that where that fat comes in and how it overlaps and out to here. So I'll just go ahead and have that come in there. But you can see in here, it gets a little like a stretched cavity in there. And so I might come in here and just Damien standard that a little bit just to get the eyelid kind of location figured out. And I might bring that peak out and then smooth it off just a little bit. And that's where I kind of put it too far over, but something like that right there. So we can make a distinction between where the eye socket and the bone structure is, and then when it transitions to brow. And then I'll just soften that a little bit. I kind of like that softer. And we'll pull this in, center, pull that back a bit. Her head, I might pull up a little bit on this, but then shrink her forehead. I don't think she has like a really tall forehead in a lot of the references I'm looking at. Cool. All right, let's go back over here. I'm gonna look at some of these ones. I like this actress. I can't remember her name, but she kind of has that kind of blockier, not blockier, but she's definitely like more square rectangle shape. I mean, she's very soft, right? But she's definitely like atypical in terms of traditional kind of femininity and how it's represented in media, like being skinny. She's definitely like a stockier woman, but she's she's, well, she's amazing just in general, right? Whether she's whatever her shape. Let's see. Let's go ahead and clear that out. I'm gonna get that. I like that transition for that lower eyelid over here. But oh, she was in the HBO series Lovecraft Country, but I think she's also in the Loki TV show. She like plays like a security guard type person or a police officer or something. Like, I don't remember that show. So I'm just pulling it up. I personally would. I think I would be looking at her a lot because I like her look a lot. She does have a smaller nose, so her nose is definitely like tinier. So maybe, you know, I don't want that part of her, right? Like maybe I do want my character to have a little bit more of like a stronger nose, and like larger, but you know. And then look at that specular. You see how it goes across that? That really helps me see where the you know, the peak is and where the planes are and how defined it is. So that really helps me out. I can see right here there's like a little bump right there, so I might go ahead and just use that clay brush just to fill in that area. There's a bit of like a fat peak right here on the cheek right there. Her lips are feel a little bit more like kind of pursed and pushed forward, so I might pull this part right here, but push this part out. And then this part feels like it's not as wide. Oh, it is a little wider, or it is pretty wide, and then come to that there. The corner of her mouth, I might pull that forward a bit. So that part I need to be careful with, so I'm going to pull it forward. I don't think her lips are quite as, or her mouth isn't quite as wide as what I've made over here. Her chin's definitely longer, but has like a more graceful kind of transition right here. She's still a very statuesque person, you know. So let's go ahead and bring her cheekbones in, give her like a bit of a kind of a taper to her face. Oops. I'm gonna go ahead and bring the corners of her eye socket up forward, and let's go up, and then I might just kind of smooth and soften this area right here a bit. So I'm just gonna soften that area. I'm going to bring her jaw forward a bit more and bring this down. I think that got a little too high. Bring the corner of her jaw up, jaw forward a little bit more. Bring that jaw in. Let's go ahead and smooth this area out. So you can see her skull is like came in massively. Oops. I think that's a good direction to go in for that one. Okay, and I'll have to stop soon. But yeah, so that's kind of where I'm at. And you know, I think because her head kept shrinking and shrinking and shrinking, what I might do is I'm gonna move this back. I probably have to bring her skull in a bit, so her cranium. So we're just going to bring this in a little bit. Let's go ahead and round that off a bit forward. I'll smooth that area out a little bit, and it kind of protrudes forward a little bit too much right there. Okay. And oh, let's go back to her head. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to scale it up a bit, so it feels a bit more proportional with the rest of her head, or with the rest of the body. But yeah, so I had to bring that head up a bit more. And let's just double check. Let's delete. Let's see. I'm just going to go ahead and make sure. Let's delete lower. I want to make sure this is symmetrical. Okay, it is. Cool. So yeah. So hopefully this helps a bit. What I like to do as well is, we need to be focused more on the the features, the planes, the structure and the anatomy of the figure in the character. That's the most important part. It sometimes helps to sometimes start dropping in like an eyeball with an iris. Once you start figuring out the eyelids, I'll do something like this. So let's come over here. On this one, I'm going to go ahead and go to darker object, fill that in, bring this back up, and then I'm just going to like do her eyebrows, because I think the eyebrows sometimes can be really helpful. You can paint them on too, but I like to do this personally. Mirror and welds. Let's see. And then so I'm just going to go ahead and just stretch that into position. And we'll go ahead and push this back until it just intersects the head. And especially once you start doing stylized, and the eyebrows can very much be like blocky and shapes like that. Then I'm going to go ahead and start pushing her brow back and do something like this and just figure out that eyebrow. So and then I'll run Damien Standard on this just to flatten that out. And then we can just smooth, and then push this back a bit more. And then just pull that forward. And we don't want to worry about it too much, right? Because we can always redo these. These are, again, like less important than the rest of the face, right? Like getting the shape of the face is really important. Something to keep in mind is, especially when people shape their eyebrows, like the brow and the eyebrows don't necessarily align with each other, like where the hair grows versus where the bone structure is. So just keep that in mind when you're working. But yeah, so hopefully this helps, right? Let's go ahead and import the ASR head, right? I obviously I'm working with a lot more time that I've done anatomy, and I have a lot more kind of experience and practice with this. So hopefully that's not too discouraging or intimidating or anything like that. I want this to be more useful than it is discouraging, but hopefully just seeing how I'm sculpting and looking how I'm kind of doing this and building it up over time and looking at some of that reference will help you kind of get to the state you need to be at. If you need help with anything, just let me know. What I might do is I might just actually export out the body stuff and send that to you if you want to take a look at that. But other than that, hope this helps.